Amid a battlefield strewn with corpses, a lone warrior rested against his sword, silently taking in the devastating scene before him. Everyone else had fallen. Then a voice shattered the silence. Irritated, he turned and saw the last person he ever wanted to meet. Ayuti, the towering giant and his greatest enemy. Just 20 days earlier, Ayuti had invaded the empire alongside 2 other giants, leaving endless destruction behind for reasons no one could understand. Narrowing his eyes, the warrior asked why Ayuti was still standing after destroying half the empire. The giant let out a laugh. "No need to concern yourself," he replied. "You'll be dead soon anyway." The warrior smirked. "You're far too confident. The others are already gone. One of your kind was reduced to ashes by a red dragon, while the other was sealed away forever by a man named Lorehorn." Ayuti's smile never faded. "You shouldn't be so proud. Even though we were defeated, we also killed those who brought us down. No one in this world is strong enough to oppose us anymore." The warrior stepped forward. Without hesitation. "I'm still standing." Ayuti scoffed. "Stop fooling yourself. I can sense your strength slipping away. It's only a matter of time." After studying him for a moment, he chuckled again. "If only you had discovered your true potential sooner. If only you had trained harder. You could have become a genuine threat to us." The warrior gave a bitter laugh. "You don't have to remind me of my regrets, Ayuti. I already know I wasted my life." Ayuti's expression turned grim. "Then at least take pride in what you've achieved. No human has ever come this far. But it changes nothing. Before long, your entire world will fall beneath the starlight." Before Ayuti could finish speaking, the warrior's blade flashed through the air. The giant's head crashed onto the ground with a heavy thud. The battle had finally ended, yet the warrior couldn't allow himself to rest. He forced his battered body onward despite the unbearable pain. As he walked, memories rushed through his mind. His comrades, the soldiers who had fought beside him. Then his eyes landed on them. Their lifeless bodies were scattered across the battlefield. He clenched his fists as grief weighed heavily on his heart. Why had they thrown away their lives for honor? Why hadn't they chosen to survive? He couldn't understand why he alone had managed to stand against the giants while even the empire's strongest swordsman had failed. If he hadn't been forced onto the front lines, perhaps they would still be alive. Lost in those thoughts, he suddenly heard someone call his name. His breathing stopped. That voice, it couldn't be. Gathering the last of his strength, he staggered toward the sound. When he finally arrived, he stood frozen. Against all odds, his Grand Commander had survived. Ronin's breath caught as he stared ahead. His Grand Commander, Adi Shan, was still alive, though one of her arms was gone. Barely able to remain standing, Adi Shan looked at him with desperate eyes. "Did you do it? Is Ayuti dead?" Ronin slowly nodded. "Yeah, it's over." Tears filled Adishan's eyes as she let out a shaky laugh, overwhelmed with relief. But Ronin wasn't done speaking. "I need to ask you a favor." Adi Shan wiped away her tears and steadied herself. "What is it?" "Take care of the soldiers' bodies," Ronin said. Confusion crossed her face. Within the empire, fallen soldiers were normally abandoned where they died or burned. "Why are you asking me? You're still alive. You can do it yourself." Ronin coughed, a thick stream of blood splashing onto the ground. He offered her a weak smile. "Not for much longer. I don't have much time left." Adishan's expression darkened. After hesitating, she quietly asked, "If you survive, what will you do?" Ronin paused before answering. "I'd go to the academy." Adishan's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why the academy?" Ronin gave a weary chuckle. "Ayuti said something that made me think, how different would my life have been if I had trained the right way. But that's not the real reason. My sister always wanted me to go there. It was her dream for me." His voice became softer. "I never made it. But at least now I'll get to see her again, along with the rest of my family." Adi Shan clenched her jaw, struggling to hold back her tears. "Don't say things like that. The rain will stop soon, and when it does, a search party will find us." Ronin scoffed. "That's impossible. This rain isn't ending anytime soon." As though the world itself had heard his words, the downpour suddenly came to a complete stop. Ronin and Adi Shan both froze, staring at the sky in disbelief. But they barely had time to process it. The ground began to shake violently beneath their feet. Ronin tightened his grip on his sword and turned toward the source of the tremor. High above them, a monstrous being towered in the sky. The creature was unlike anything they had ever seen. It carried the same overwhelming presence as the giants, but this one had 8 massive wings and a horrifying, twisted body. And it wasn't alone. Behind it, more than 100 creatures just like it covered the sky. Adishan's body stiffened. She had believed the war would end with the deaths of the 3 giants. But this was something entirely different. The hope she had been holding on to began to fade. Then Ronin's voice broke through her thoughts. "Adi Shan, he shouted. Use your telekinesis to launch me into the air. I'll fight them. She turned toward him in disbelief. Are you serious? You can barely stand, and you still want to fight? Ronin wiped the blood from his lips and raised his sword. His eyes burned with unwavering resolve. I won't give up until I'm dead. Audishan could only stare at him. Even now, standing at death's doorstep, Ronin refused to surrender. Her hesitation disappeared. If anyone could face these monsters, it was him. She stepped closer, determination returning to her eyes. Without saying a word, she moved beside him and gently placed a small glowing blue sphere into his mouth. Ronin frowned as he felt the tiny object resting on his tongue. What did you just put in my mouth? Audishan leaned close, her warm breath brushing against his ear as she whispered words meant only for him. Then she pulled away and looked directly into his eyes. If we ever meet again, promise me you'll tell me to become a tailor. Ronin blinked in confusion. A tailor? She gave him a small, bittersweet smile. I've done many things in my life, but nothing ever made me happier than sewing. Before Ronin could answer, the sky suddenly darkened. The eight-winged creature lifted its hand, crackling with a strange and unfamiliar energy. A blinding wave of power rushed toward them, and everything faded into darkness. When Ronin opened his eyes, he gasped and sat upright. Silence surrounded him. He looked around in confusion. The battlefield had disappeared. The monsters, the corpses, and the ruined land were all gone. Instead, familiar sights greeted him. Old houses, dirt roads, and a gentle breeze flowing through the trees. This was the village where he had grown up. Impossible. His hands trembled as he looked at them. He wasn't just back in his hometown. His body had changed as well. It was younger, healthier, and stronger. He had truly returned to the past. Ronin took a shaky breath and sat down, desperately trying to understand what had happened. Then Addison's final memories rushed back to him. The blue orb. She had told him it was an artifact that allowed its owner to travel back through time. It was the reason a simple tailor like her had eventually become the Grand Commander. The artifact granted 4 chances to rewrite history. Audishan had already used 3 of them. This final chance had been entrusted to him. You have the strength to defeat the giants, she had told him. If anyone can stop them, it's you. When you return, you have to become stronger. You must enroll at Philin Academy. It's the finest place to train the heroes of the future. Then he remembered her final request. Promise me, tell me to become a tailor. Ronin clenched his fists. Her voice still echoed in his ears, and the desperate look in her eyes remained vivid in his mind, yet she was gone. For a long moment, he sat there in silence, crushed by everything that had happened. Was this truly real? Or was it nothing more than a cruel illusion? Frustration surged through him. He let out a furious roar and repeatedly slammed his fist against a nearby tree until his knuckles split open and bled. Then he suddenly stopped. This was real. And if he had truly returned to the past, then his sister was still alive. His heart raced. Without wasting another second, he grabbed a stick lying on the ground and sprinted toward home. As he ran through the village, something caught his attention. A group of boys had surrounded another child who was hanging upside down from a tree. Ronin slowed down. Something wasn't right. The boy wasn't tied up. There were no ropes holding him. He was floating upside down, suspended in midair by magic. Ronin's breath caught in his throat. Mages were incredibly rare. Even during the war, they had almost disappeared. Yet here, in this small village, someone was already capable of using magic. Then, realization struck him. He knew exactly who this child was. One of the greatest magicians of the future was standing right before him, long before tragedy had changed everything. The bully controlling the magic hesitated, guilt briefly flashing across his face, but he still refused to let the boy down. Please, the boy begged. I don't have any money. Ronin tightened his grip on the stick. This time, things will be different. The boy trembled, his voice barely louder than a whisper. Please, that money is for my mother's medicine. The bully sneered. I don't care about your mother, he spat before slapping the boy across the face. Now hand over the rest. Tears filled the boy's eyes as he clutched his pouch even tighter. But the bully wasn't finished. He turned toward Yahello, the young magician standing beside him. Lift him higher, he ordered. Take him all the way to the top of the tree. Yahello hesitated, his hands trembling. I can't. If I lose control, he'll fall and die. The bully's expression darkened. Then maybe I'll send you up there instead. Ashel's blood ran cold. He had learned magic to prove he wasn't weak, to show everyone what he was capable of. Yet now, that very power had turned him into a tool for someone else's cruelty. His mind raced, unable to decide what to do. Then, without warning, a wooden stick slammed into him. The impact made Yahello flinch, and in that instant, he lost control of his magic. The boy he had been holding crashed straight to the ground. Are you trying to kill him? a new voice cut through the chaos. The bully and Asshel turned to see Ronan standing there, gripping a wooden stick and glaring at them. The bully's eyes burned with rage. Asshel, who told you to stop? Asshel opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, Ronan stepped forward. Where did you learn telekinesis? He asked. Asshel blinked. I found a grimoire. I bought it from a traveling peddler. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Even with nothing more than a cheap grimoire, Ashel's control over magic was already this impressive. The bully clenched his fists, furious that he was being ignored. Enough, he shouted as he drew a sword from his waist. Ronan narrowed his eyes. A real sword? How did a kid like him even get one? The bully rushed forward, swinging recklessly. His stance was sloppy and full of openings. Ronan sighed. Amateur. With effortless ease, he stepped aside, avoiding the attack without the slightest struggle. The bully stumbled forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. You just got lucky, he shouted. Get on your knees and beg. Maybe I'll spare your life. Maybe I'll even take good care of your sister for you. Ronan's expression froze. What did you just say? The bully grinned, sensing he had struck a nerve. You heard me. Your sister. I've always dreamed of. Crack. A sharp scream echoed through the village. The bully staggered backward, clutching the side of his head. Blood poured through his fingers. His ear was gone. Ronan stood over him with his wooden stick raised. Say her name again, he said in a cold, dangerous voice. I dare you. The other bullies stood frozen. Every one of them carried the same kind of wooden stick as Ronan, yet somehow he had used his to slice clean through flesh. This wasn't an ordinary village boy. He was something completely different. Ronan pointed the stick at them. Drop the money, now. Not one of them dared to resist. Still trembling, the bullies threw down the stolen money along with a few extra coins, muttering that Ronan had completely ruined their day. After gathering everything, Ronan handed it to the boy. The boy stared at it in surprise. This is more than what they stole. Ronan shrugged. I don't need it. I only wanted the sword. The boy clutched the money tightly, gratitude filling his eyes. Just as he was about to thank Ronan again, Asshel finally found the courage to speak. I'm sorry, he said with his head lowered. I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, but he threatened me. The boy hesitated before giving him a small smile. It's okay. I understand. After thanking Ronan one last time, he turned and ran home. Ronan watched him leave before shifting his attention back to Asshel. So you're not actually a bully? Asshel shook his head firmly. Good, Ronan replied. Then meet me again in 4 days. I have something I need you to do. Asshel looked up in confusion. What? Ronan smirked. Just be there, and don't even think about running away. If I have to come find you, I'll beat you up. Without waiting for a reply, Ronan turned and sprinted toward his house. When he arrived, he noticed several wildflowers blooming near the entrance. He bent down and picked a few of them. His sister had always loved flowers, but as he looked at them in his hands, doubt crept into his mind. This is ridiculous. Just as he was about to throw them away, the front door slowly creaked open. He froze. A familiar voice called out to him. For years, while serving as a soldier, he had dreamed of this moment. Seeing his sister again. He had imagined what he would say. Would he apologize for leaving? Would he tell her how much he had missed her? But the moment he saw her, all he could do was smile. Inside the house, his older sister, Enro, noticed the flowers in his hands. A warm smile spread across her face as she admired them. You remembered, she whispered, her eyes sparkling. Ronan sat down, and before he realized it, Enro had prepared an enormous meal. Plate after plate of food covered the table. You didn't have to make this much, Ronan said with a laugh. I just wanted to show how grateful I am, Enro replied. Now eat. As they ate together, Ronan suddenly asked, how old are you this year? Enro blinked in confusion. What kind of question is that? Just answer me. 22, she replied slowly, watching him curiously. Ronan let out a quiet sigh of relief. If she was 22, then there were still 10 full years before the war with the giants. 10 years to prepare. Enro frowned and reached over, placing her hand against his forehead. Are you feeling sick? Since when do you care about my age? Ronan chuckled and shook his head. He had almost forgotten how gentle and caring his sister truly was. This time, no matter what happened, he would protect her. Taking a deep breath, he looked her in the eyes. I want to enroll in an academy. Silence filled the room. Then Enro's eyes widened. Are you serious? Yeah. She stared at him in disbelief. You always rejected the idea whenever I mentioned it. You said it was a complete waste of time. Why the sudden change? Ronan simply nodded. I've thought it over. I'm ready now. Enro's face lit up with excitement. Without saying another word, she hurried to the corner of the house and dragged out a huge pot. Ronan raised an eyebrow. What's that? Enro lifted the lid, revealing stacks of neatly saved coins inside. His eyes widened. Where did all this come from? She smiled proudly. I've been saving it for you in secret. I always believed you'd change your mind someday, so I put aside everything I could. Now you can attend an academy without worrying about the tuition. Ronan stared at her in silence. He had never expected this. Even while he had refused to think about his future, his sister had been quietly preparing for it. This time, he wouldn't let her sacrifices go to waste. Ronan thanked her sincerely, his voice filled with gratitude. But his expression soon turned serious as he admitted that the money she had saved still wouldn't be enough for the academy he wanted to attend. Curious, Iril asked which academy he had chosen. Philin Academy, Ronan answered without hesitation. Iril's eyes widened in shock. Philin Academy, she almost shouted. It wasn't just another academy, it was the academy, the greatest institution in the empire and the birthplace of countless heroes. Legends like Grand Commander Adi Shan, Swordmaster Shayan, and the infamous Winter which had all graduated from there. Backed by the imperial family, it gathered the finest warriors and brightest minds across the continent. Getting accepted wasn't merely difficult, it was nearly impossible. Even Iroh wasn't sure Ronan could make it. After a long walk, Ronan finally reached his destination. To his surprise, Yahello was already waiting for him. Yahello, Ronan called as he walked over. I need your help with something important. Yahello raised an eyebrow. What is it? Use your telekinesis to lift me into the air. Yahello blinked. What? Lift you? Ronan nodded. That's right. Yahello hesitated. That sounds dangerous. Why should I do that? Ronan remained silent, waiting. Still uncertain, Yahello let out a sigh and stretched out his hand. A moment later, Ronan's body slowly began rising. Ashel's telekinesis carried him higher and higher until he was far above the ground. Ronan's eyes widened. So this was the true extent of Ashel's power. It wasn't nearly as overwhelming as the telekinesis Ayuti had used, but Ronan understood just how valuable this ability was. During his battle with Ayuti, telekinesis had been one of the biggest reasons he was able to keep fighting. And with such a rare talent, Yahello was destined to play a crucial role in the battles yet to come, especially against the giants. But Ashel's control was beginning to weaken. Ronan, I can't hold you much longer. Just one more second. Ronan shouted back. He unsheathed his sword and gripped it firmly. Then, with one swift swing, he slashed through the air. In the next instant, his body dropped. Ashel's heart nearly stopped. He hadn't released his magic, yet Ronan still fell. The moment Ronan landed safely, Yahello rushed over, his face filled with disbelief. Why you cut through my magic? Ronan smirked and lightly knocked him on the head. Don't ask stupid questions. Even during his years as a soldier, Ronan had never fully understood the true nature of his own abilities. But this time, he intended to uncover every secret. Sliding his sword back into its sheath, Ronan tossed his bag toward Yahello. Come on, he said as he started walking ahead. You'll want to see this. See what? Yahello asked, still trying to process everything that had just happened. Ronan grinned. The first page of my biography, or, as history will remember it, one of the greatest moments in the Empire's history. Yahello stared at him in confusion. What are you talking about? Ronan glanced back over his shoulder. I'm joining Philin Academy. And you're coming with me. Yahello was stunned. He had always known Ronan was a martial arts genius, but attending Philin Academy felt impossible. Unlike Ronan, he had never considered himself talented enough to even set foot in a place like that. Ronan noticed the doubt in his eyes and scoffed. What? Are you really going to waste your entire life in this village? Crossing his arms, he spoke with clear disappointment. You're a coward, a loser. If you stay here, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Ashel's breath caught in his throat. Ronan's words struck him deeply, but not in a cruel way. For the first time in his life, someone was genuinely pushing him to become something greater. And that person was Ronan. A slow smile spread across Ashel's face. You really think I can do it? Ronan smirked. If you weren't worth it, I wouldn't waste my time on you. That was all Yahello needed to hear. Alright, I'll do it. I'll go to Philin Academy. Ronan placed a hand on his shoulder. Good. That's the decision of a real man. But now you've got to prove you're more than just words. Yahello blinked in confusion. By the time they reached their destination, he finally understood what Ronan meant. Watching them from the shadows was his very first challenge, a lunar goblin. His stomach sank. Are you serious? Ronan grinned. This is the perfect test for you. Yahello couldn't decide whether Ronan was fearless or completely insane. Lunar goblins were nothing like ordinary goblins. They had pale yellow skin, horribly twisted bodies, and an overwhelming obsession with gold. Every full moon, they gathered everything they had stolen and celebrated with a grand festival. And tonight happened to be that very night. Asahel turned toward Ronan. Wait, how do you even know all of this? Ronan shrugged. I read it in a book. It was a complete lie. The truth was that he remembered it from his previous life, but Asahel didn't need to know that. Ronan pointed toward the goblin's treasure pile. Your job is simple. Use your telekinesis to steal all their treasure and put it into my bag. Ashel's face turned pale. You want me to rob them? What if I wake them up? We'll be dead. Ronan leaned closer. Listen, if we're serious about getting into Philin Academy, we need two things. First, money. The tuition is absurdly expensive, and we need a way to pay for it. He paused before continuing. More importantly, we need real combat experience. Asahel swallowed nervously as Ronan continued in a firm voice. That academy is filled with noble kids who've been training since they were born. The only way we'll ever catch up to them is by gaining real experience and risking our lives. That's why these goblins are perfect. They give us both money and experience. Asahel let out a shaky breath. It sounded completely insane, but Ronan wasn't wrong. As terrifying as it was, he made perfect sense. After a long pause, Asahel closed his eyes, steadied his breathing, and nodded. All right, I'll do it. Slowly and carefully, he raised his hands. His telekinesis activated, and the first piece of treasure gently floated into the air. He couldn't afford a single mistake. One slip, and they would both die. Once the bags were completely filled, Ronan turned to Asahel with an approving nod. Nice work. Truthfully, he hadn't been certain Asahel could actually pull it off. Seeing everything go exactly as planned was a pleasant surprise. Looks like I found myself a pretty useful little servant, Ronan thought with a smirk as he secured the bag over his shoulder. Just then, loud shouting shattered the silence. Two men were chasing after a bird, yelling in frustration. Unfortunately for Ronan, the commotion was loud enough to wake one of the goblins. The creature slowly opened its eyes and glanced around before suddenly freezing. The treasure was gone. A piercing scream echoed through the night as it frantically woke the others, rapidly explaining what had happened. Ronan and Asahel had barely started moving before the goblin spotted them. In an instant, the entire group charged forward, burning with rage. Ashel's legs gave out beneath him, and he collapsed to the ground, trembling. Ronan, should we just leave the treasure and run? Ronan shot him a sharp glare. No, we need that treasure to pay our tuition. As the furious goblins rushed toward them, Ronan calmly drew his sword. Ronan gave the sword a quick swing, testing its balance and edge. Cheap steel, he thought. 15 solid strikes, maybe less before it becomes useless. And there are 30 of them. Still, 15 attacks would be more than enough. The instant the goblins charged, Ronan moved. His blade flashed beneath the moonlight. With a single slash, 3 heads rolled across the ground. Ashel's eyes widened. He barely had time to process what had happened before Ronan disappeared, moving so fast it looked as though he had vanished. One after another, the goblins dropped, their bodies collapsing before they even realized they had been cut down. By the time the final goblin fell, silence filled the forest. Ronan flicked the blood from his sword and turned to Asahel. Get up, we're going home. As they walked back, Ronan felt a dull ache spread through his shoulders. Seriously? He muttered with a frown. I only killed a few goblins, and I'm already sore. Then it hit him. His body was still young and hadn't fully developed. Looks like I need to start training properly. Asahel, still trying to process everything he had witnessed, finally broke the silence. Hey, Ronan, who do you think made that loud noise? The one that woke the goblins? Ronan scoffed. No idea. But if I ever find them, I'm beating them into the ground. Before Asahel could reply, something whistled through the air. An arrow. It was flying straight toward Ashel's head. In a blur, Ronan shot out his hand and caught it before it could hit. Asahel stumbled backward, his face turning pale. What was that? Where did it come from? Ronan slowly turned, scanning the darkness around them. 2 men stepped out from the shadows. Ashel's jaw dropped. It's them, the same 2 men who were chasing that bird. The strangers stared at them, their eyes immediately landing on Ronan's bag. The moment they noticed the stolen treasure, their expressions changed. One of them forced out a nervous laugh. Sorry about that, kids. Didn't mean to shoot at you. Ronan's eye twitched. Kids. He took a slow step forward. Drop the fake apology, he said coldly. Who are you? The man grinned. In the very next second, he lunged. A knife gleamed beneath the moonlight as it sliced toward Ronan's throat. You're about to find out, he sneered. The name's Caliboro. The instant Ronan heard that name, his expression darkened. In one smooth motion, he twisted the knife from the man's hand and drove it straight into his chest. The man gasped, staggered backward, and collapsed to the ground. His companion roared in fury and charged at Ronin, only to freeze in midair. An invisible force wrapped around his body, holding him completely still. Behind him stood Asahel with one hand raised, his telekinesis fully activated. Ronin glanced back with a smirk. Nice timing. Without wasting another moment, he grabbed the restrained man's knife and cut him down just as effortlessly as the first. Ashel's stomach churned. He had seen Ronin fight before, but this was different. Did you just kill them? Ronin calmly wiped the blood from the blade. They tried to kill us, he replied. This is exactly what they deserved. Asahel swallowed hard, but Ronin continued. These men weren't ordinary bandits. The Calaboro group is the worst kind of criminal. They're poachers, kidnappers, and human traffickers. They destroy lives without a second thought. Ronin glanced at the corpses. They weren't after our treasure. They planned to harvest our organs. A chill ran down Ashel's spine. As Ronin began dragging the bodies aside, something suddenly shifted. One of the bags the men had been carrying moved on its own. Ronin and Asahel exchanged a cautious look before opening it. The instant they did, a bird burst out and flew into the air. Ronin's eyes widened. Its feathers shimmered with a brilliant blue color. But what truly caught his attention was the chain wrapped around its leg. It was a restraint designed to disrupt mana flow and prevent mystical creatures from escaping. This kind of chain is used to capture magical beasts, Ronin murmured. Why would a group like Calaboro have something so rare? As he examined the bird more closely, he noticed something else. A faintly glowing magic circle engraved on its back. Before he could react, a voice echoed through the air. Asahel. Asahel jumped in surprise. Did that bird just talk? Ronin narrowed his eyes. No, someone is speaking through it. The truth immediately became clear. It was communication magic, and it had activated the moment the bird was released. Whoever was on the other end had been trying to reach it all this time, but the bag had blocked the connection. The voice spoke again. Finally, I've been trying to reach you for hours. The speaker introduced himself as Vaughn, a professor who specialized in researching mystical beasts. That bird is Mars, Vaughn explained. I'm his caretaker. I lost contact with him and was about to report his disappearance to the authorities. What happened? Ronin smirked. We're just a couple of righteous travelers, he replied smoothly. We rescued Mars from a group of poachers. Vaughn was stunned. Poachers? You mean someone actually captured Mars? Yeah, Ronin answered casually. They were complete scum. Vaughn let out a relieved sigh. Thank you. I owe both of you a great deal. Tell me, how can I repay you? Asahel waved his hand dismissively. There's no need. But Mars looks exhausted. Can he even make it back to you like this? Ronin looked toward Vaughn. Will he be able to fly if I break the chain? Vaughn paused before answering. If you can break it with a single clean strike, then yes. Ronin nodded. Without hesitation, he unsheathed his sword and, with one swift slash, cut straight through the chain. The metal shattered instantly and fell to the ground. Ronin looked at Mars. Go on. Head home. The bird flapped its wings, testing its freedom. But instead of flying away, it turned around and shoved its feathery backside right into Ronin's face. Ronin froze. What? Asahel burst into laughter. I think he likes you. Ronin frowned. I just saved your life, you stupid bird, and this is how you repay me. Mars chirped happily, completely ignoring his complaints. Asahel wiped a tear from his eye. Well, you are his hero. Ronin groaned. Just leave already. Just before Mars flew off, Vaughn's voice echoed through the communication spell once again. Ronin, he called out. Mars wants to see you again someday. Ronin raised an eyebrow. Ha, why? Vaughn chuckled. Who knows? Maybe he's grateful. Either way, pluck one of his feathers. Ronin frowned. Why would I do that? A dream bird like Mars can use one of its feathers as a compass to locate its main body, Vaughn explained. If you ever want to find him again, the feather will lead you to him. Ronin sighed but reached out and plucked a single blue feather. Good, Vaughn said. When you visit my institution someday, I'll properly repay you. Until then, take care. With that, Mars gave one last cheerful chirp before soaring into the sky. As Ronin watched him disappear into the distance, something caught his attention. A small, strange object was resting in his hand. A few days later, Ronin headed to the Caribou merchantry to sell the treasures he had collected. The merchant, Duan Caribou, welcomed him with a broad smile. The moment he saw the pile of valuables Ronin had brought, his eyes lit up with interest. Well, you've gathered quite an impressive collection. Ronin felt relieved. Unlike the other merchants who had tried to cheat him, Do-on was honest and straightforward. By the way, Ronan said as he reached into his bag, can you appraise something for me? He pulled out the strange object and handed it over. Do-on frowned as he carefully examined it. What exactly is this? Ronan sighed. Honestly, I thought it was poop at first. That annoying bird Mars left it with me. I got so irritated that I threw it at a boulder. Do-on looked up, and it shattered the boulder, Ronan muttered. Do-on's eyes widened. He slowly turned the object over in his hands, thinking deeply. It kind of looks like horse dung. Ronan immediately snatched it back. First I thought it was poop. Now you think it's poop. This thing better not actually be poop. He tucked it back into his bag. I'll figure it out later. Shaking his head, he changed the topic. Do you happen to sell books about Philin Academy? Do-on nodded. Planning to apply? Yeah, Ronan replied. We need study material. Do-on smiled brightly. That's wonderful. My daughter is applying too. He turned toward the back of the shop and called out, Maria, come over here. A moment later, a young girl stepped forward. Ronan's eyes widened. Do-on gestured toward them. Maria, these are important customers. I just finished doing business with them. Maria looked Ronan and Yahello up and down before blinking in surprise. They're just kids. Do-on sighed. Maria, that's rude. Then he turned back to Ronan. I apologize. Ronan barely acknowledged the apology as he stepped closer to Maria, studying her face carefully. After a moment, he quietly asked, is your middle name Sun? Maria's expression immediately turned cautious. Yes. Why? Ronan's heart skipped a beat. She looked exactly like someone he had known in his previous life. There was only one problem. Back then, Maria had been a man. Without thinking, Ronan leaned in and quietly asked, are you actually a guy? Maria froze. A second later, smack. Ronan's head snapped to the side as Maria slapped him with all her strength. Pain shot across his face, but instead of getting angry, he stood there in silence, deep in thought. There had only ever been one person who slapped him like that. In his previous life, Ronan had served as a disciplinary soldier in Enro 1. The Maria he knew there had been the officer in charge of supplies, an easygoing guy who got along with everyone. But there was one thing that always set him off, any mention of the word penis. Ronan rubbed his stinging cheek and let out a slow breath. There was no doubt anymore. This Maria was the same Maria he had known. In his past life, Ronan had always been curious about Maria's strange behavior. He had wanted to ask about it, but never got the chance because Maria died before he could. Now, standing before her, he finally understood the truth. So that's why she always acted like that. She was actually a girl all along. Ronan couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it. Maria, however, completely misunderstood his reaction. You think this is funny? She snapped, raising her fist for another punch. This time, Ronan caught her wrist before it landed. That's enough, he said, lightly tapping her on the head. I only let you slap me because I asked a stupid question. Maria glared at him. Don't push your luck. Push my luck. Without warning, she slammed her forehead into his chin. Ronan staggered backward. You little. Before anyone could react, the two of them were brawling. Yahello stood there frozen, staring in disbelief. Are they both insane? After several minutes of wrestling and throwing punches, they finally stopped, both breathing heavily. Then, as if nothing had happened, they casually started talking like old friends. Yahello could only watch in complete confusion. Maria brushed the dust off her clothes and walked over to a nearby weapon rack, pulling out a black iron sword. She held it out toward Ronan. This is a black iron sword, she explained. Even knights compete to get one. It's durable, incredibly sharp, and perfect for battle. Ronan carefully examined it. I fight pretty recklessly. I need something that won't break easily. Maria smirked. Then this is exactly what you're looking for. Ronan ran his fingers along the blade, feeling its weight and balance. His grip tightened. This is the very same sword I used in my previous life. Suppressing a smile, he nodded. I'll take it. After handing over the sword, Maria turned to Yahello. What about you? What kind of magic do you use? Yahello straightened his posture. I use telekinesis. Maria's eyes widened. Telekinesis. She stared at him for a moment before breaking into a grin. You're lucky. If you perform well during the entrance exam, you could earn a scholarship. Yahello's jaw nearly dropped. A scholarship? Yep. You might not have to pay tuition at all. Hearing that, Yahello's face instantly lit up with excitement. Maria, however, had already turned her attention back to Ronan. All right. Now you're the real problem. Ronan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Maria crossed her arms. Do you already have a technique prepared for the entrance exam? Ronan blinked. A technique? Maria sighed. You do realize you have to impress the judges to get into Philin Academy, right? She continued. The written exam is difficult, but the practical exam is the real challenge. If you perform well enough there, you can still get accepted even with terrible written scores. Ronan frowned. So what kind of technique am I supposed to show them? Maria shrugged. Students from noble families usually demonstrate their family's secret techniques. Martial artists without noble backgrounds show off their own mana-based combat techniques. Ronan narrowed his eyes. Wait, martial artists can use mana? Maria froze and stared at him. You're kidding, right? Ronan didn't answer. He simply looked at her, waiting for an explanation. Maria rubbed her temples in frustration. You're seriously applying to fill an academy without knowing something this basic? Ronan stayed silent, but the blank look on his face made it obvious. He genuinely had no idea. Maria groaned. I can't believe this. Ronan frowned. So, is sensing mana similar to sensing aura? Maria's eyes widened even more. Are you serious? She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Someone this clueless wanted to enter fill an academy. Ronan, completely unfazed, simply shrugged. Relax. It might turn out to be something I already know. I just never called it mana. Maria let out a long sigh and rubbed her temples. Get up. We're going outside. On the way out, she grabbed two of Ronan's short swords. Hey, leave those, Ronan called after her. What if you damage them? Maria shot him an annoyed look. If I break them, I'll pay you 3 times what you spent. Now move. We're starting some special training. Ronan narrowed his eyes. Special training? Huh. He stood up and followed her outside. Maria took a deep breath before beginning her explanation. Mana is the power of nature. It's an energy that exists everywhere, but not everyone can control it. To use it, you first have to sense it, and that isn't easy. It takes intense training and a deep understanding of yourself. She continued, for most people, it takes an entire year just to develop mana sense. After that, they spend years refining their techniques before they even think about applying to fill an academy. She looked directly at Ronan. The fact that you don't even know the difference between aura and mana proves you're nowhere near ready for the academy. Ronan folded his arms. So what's the difference? Maria let out an exasperated sigh. Aura is simply a higher form of mana. Even people born with exceptional mana talent usually need at least 10 years before they can develop aura. Ronan's thoughts drifted back to the battlefield. He had fought alongside warriors who wielded aura. They boasted endlessly about their power, displayed incredible abilities, and acted as if they were invincible. Yet in the end, most of them had still died. Ronan smirked. So you're saying aura is just mana with extra flair? Maria groaned. I'm done explaining. Without warning, she rushed at him, both swords flashing through the air. Ronan reacted on instinct, raising his blade just in time to block her attack. The force behind her strike caught him by surprise. She's strong. As their swords clashed, Ronan carefully observed her movements. Fast, precise. She handled dual blades like an expert. He narrowed his eyes. Is she using mana right now? He couldn't see it, but he could clearly feel it. Maria had planned to overwhelm Ronan in a single exchange, hoping to demonstrate the difference mana made and convince him to give up on the entrance exam before embarrassing himself. But Ronan refused to fall. In fact, he was far stronger than she had expected. How is he matching me without using mana? She hesitated for only a brief moment. Ronan instantly took advantage of the opening. He forced her backward with his sword before shifting into a deadly stance. His presence changed. Maria felt a dangerous pressure radiating from him. You'd better dodge, Ronan warned. Something in his voice sent chills down her spine. Acting purely on instinct, she leaped aside. A split second later, Ronan's blade sliced through the exact spot where she had been standing. Maria landed several feet away, her heart pounding wildly. That attack would have killed me. She stared at Ronan in complete disbelief. You're not normal. Ronan let out a quiet chuckle. Neither are you. Lowering his sword, he turned away. You're talented with those blades, he said over his shoulder. But your balance is off. Fix that, and you'll improve a lot. Maria clenched her fists. Who said we're done? She shouted. The fight isn't over yet. Ronan smirked. You also promised to pay me triple if you damaged my swords. Remember? The moment he finished speaking, crack. Maria's twin swords snapped cleanly in half. She stood there frozen, staring at the broken blades in shock. Ashello, who had been watching from the sidelines, shrugged. Don't worry, he said. It's not like you ever had a chance against Ronan anyway. With that, he followed Ronan as they walked away, leaving Maria standing there in complete disbelief. Her fists tightened. What the hell just happened? She had never met anyone like Ronan before. At this point, she wasn't even sure he was human. The following day, Maria met up with Ronan and Ashello again, carrying a stack of books and study materials. "These are my personal notes," she said as she handed them over. Ronan raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Maria blinked. "For the entrance exam, obviously." She folded her arms. "You do know the test is only a month away, right?" Ronan frowned as he looked down at the pile of books. "All of this? In 1 month?" He slowly pulled out his sword. "Are you trying to scam me?" Maria rolled her eyes. "Relax. They're free." The moment she said that, Ronan casually slid his sword back into its sheath. "You should have led with that." Maria shook her head with a smile. "Honestly, I'm giving them to you because I like you too. I want all of us to get into Philin Academy together." Ashel's face lit up. "Really?" Maria nodded. "I'd teach you myself, but my group is relocating soon. So study hard, work hard, and I'll see both of you at the academy." Ronan smirked. "Don't worry about us. Just worry about yourself." Maria climbed into the carriage and gave them one last wave. "And don't lose my books." With that, she departed. As soon as Maria was gone, Ronan stretched his arms and winced. His muscles still ached from their sparring session. His body hadn't fully adjusted yet. "Looks like I need to train even harder." He found the situation strangely amusing. In his previous life, all he had ever done was fight. Now he had to study and train just to get into an academy. It felt strange, but he didn't mind it. That very night, he created a new routine for himself. He started eating more to build his strength, hunted monsters every day to sharpen his instincts, and pushed his stamina to its absolute limit. Eventually, he wiped out every monster around the village. Then, instead of resting at night, he spent his time studying. If someone had told his past self that he'd be living like this, he would have laughed in their face. But now, it was necessary. A month quickly passed, and the day of the entrance exam finally arrived. The moment Ashello stepped onto the academy grounds, his breath caught in his throat. This is Philin Academy. Standing before him was a structure so enormous it hardly seemed real. It wasn't just an academy, it was practically a city. Ronan glanced at Ashello with a smirk. "Quit staring. You look like a country bumpkin." Ashello quickly closed his mouth, ready to apologize, but then something caught his attention. "Wait a second, Ronan. Did you get taller?" Ronan shrugged. "Stop worrying about pointless things. Focus on the exam." As they continued toward the academy, Ronan's thoughts drifted elsewhere. "So the sword saint, Schlieffen, is taking the entrance exam too." Schlieffen, the strongest swordsman in the empire, belonged to the prestigious Grancia clan, a family famous for producing master swordsmen. Ronan was certain they would eventually meet. After all, they were the same age. While he was lost in thought, Ashello suddenly spoke up. "Do you still have Mars's feather?" Ronan blinked. "Yeah." He reached into his pocket and pulled it out. The moment he did, the feather pointed toward a massive building inside the academy. At the top of that building, Mars was perched beside Professor Von Faz, helping him rearrange his office. Vaughn, a war lion, was getting everything ready before meeting Ronan properly. He opened the window to let in some fresh air, only to find himself staring directly into Ronan's eerie grin. What?" Both Vaughn and Mars screamed in shock. Vaughn's fur stood on end. "How did you get up here?" "My office is on the top floor." His eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Wait, are you here to steal Mars?" Ronan casually held up the feather. Vaughn's eyes widened. "Wait, could it be?" A second later, recognition spread across his face. "Why, you're the ones who rescued Mars." Ronan nodded. "That's right." Vaughn let out a long sigh and rubbed his temples. "Damn it, sorry for screaming." Ronan waved it off. "Don't worry about it. It's his fault anyway." He pointed his thumb toward Ashello. Ashel's mouth dropped open. "What? You're the one who said you were too tired to climb the stairs. You told me to use telekinesis to lift you up." Before he could say anything else, Ronan quickly clamped a hand over his mouth. Vaughn raised an amused eyebrow. Ronan cleared his throat. "Anyway, I'm surprised. A war lion teaching at Philin Academy?" Vaughn chuckled. "And I'm surprised the two of you are applicants." His expression softened. "If I'd known, I would have written you a recommendation letter. You wouldn't have needed to take the entrance exam at all." Ronan smirked. "No thanks. We'll pass on our own." Then he reached into his bag. "Actually, there is something I'd like you to look at." He pulled out the strange egg Mars had left behind. The instant Vaughn saw it, his entire body went stiff. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Why is he so shocked? "It's just an egg. Birds lay eggs, don't they?" Vaughn's expression turned serious. "Dream bird eggs aren't ordinary eggs." He leaned closer and examined it carefully. "To be honest, I don't even know what will hatch from this." Ronan frowned. "You're telling me you have no idea what's inside your own bird's egg?" Vaughn nodded. "Dream bird eggs are unique. Whatever hatches depends entirely on the mana the egg absorbs from its surroundings. If it's kept near lava, it could hatch into something. Like a phoenix. If it's left inside a monster's nest, the hatchling might resemble that monster. Vaughn's expression grew even darker. And in extremely rare cases, it might not even hatch into a bird at all. Ronan frowned. Since when did eggs become this complicated? He looked down at the egg in his hands. Just where was Mars living to lay something like this? Vaughn folded his arms. If I analyze the mana inside the egg, I might be able to estimate what will hatch from it. He sighed. But right now, I honestly have no idea. Ronan groaned. Great. A mystery egg. Just what I needed. To his surprise, Vaughn held the egg back out to him. I want you to keep it. Ronan blinked. Seriously, this thing has to be valuable. Vaughn nodded. A dream bird only lays one egg in its entire lifetime. The fact that Mars laid it in front of you means he saw something special in you. Ronan frowned as he stared at the egg. Something special. Huh. A second later, he smirked. Fine, I'll keep it. I'm curious to see what comes out of it anyway. Just as Ronan and Asahel were about to leave, Vaughn stopped them. Wait. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a rolled-up map, and handed it to Ronan. This will help. You hatch the egg. Ronan accepted it without hesitation. Thanks. With that, he and Asahel headed toward Galleon Castle, where the entrance examination was being held. Inside the castle, all of the martial arts applicants had gathered in one hall, waiting for their turn. An attendant stepped out from a nearby room and called, "Applicant number 112, step forward." Ronan sighed. Still not my turn. Sitting beside him, Maria chuckled. Every entrance exam is like this. You'll get used to it. Ronan glanced at what she was wearing. What are you dressed up for? Maria smirked. Philin Academy is full of nobles. I have to make a good impression. Some of them could become my future customers. Ronan rolled his eyes. Merchant mentality. Before Maria could answer, the door opened. Applicant number 112 walked out with a completely unreadable expression. The attendant called once more. Applicant number 113. Ronan stood up. Maria gave him an encouraging smile. Don't be nervous. Just do your best. Ronan scoffed. Nervous? You're acting like something bad is about to happen. He walked into the examination hall. The moment he stepped inside, he felt it. The atmosphere was unbelievably heavy. Sitting before him were the examiners, each radiating an overwhelming presence. But two of them stood out immediately. At the center sat an elderly man surrounded by an incredible amount of mana. Ronan recognized him instantly. Archmage Cravasier, the headmaster of the academy and one of the greatest mages alive. A short distance away sat a woman. Unlike the mages around her, she wasn't overflowing with mana, yet her presence was just as overwhelming. Her posture was flawless, her gaze razor-sharp, and the aura she carried belonged to only one kind of person. A swordsman. Ronan narrowed his eyes. Wait, I know who she is. Nero, the Grand Sword Saint. Ronan slowly exhaled. Well, this just got interesting. One of the examiners leaned forward. State your name. Ronan. Good. Your examination will consist of fighting a magically engineered combat dummy. Another professor adjusted his glasses. What technique will you be demonstrating? Ronan smirked. Time to show them something entertaining. I'm only going to use a fast slash. The room instantly fell silent. Every professor stared at him in disbelief. That's it? A single sword slash without using mana? They almost laughed. The combat dummy had been specially designed to endure attacks from aura users. Its durability was absurd, and it could regenerate almost instantly. Even Cheyenne, one of the Empire's greatest swordsmen, had barely managed to leave a scratch on it. To them, Ronan was either unbelievably foolish or completely delusional. Archmage Cravasier remained silent while the other professors quietly whispered among themselves. Unlike the rest, he wasn't judging Ronan's words. He was observing the young man himself, and what he sensed left him stunned. That presence, that overwhelming vitality at such a young age. There's something different about this boy. The instant Ronan drew his sword, the atmosphere inside the room changed. Then, shing, a single slash. Fast, clean, precise. It ended before anyone had time to react. Ronan calmly sheathed his sword and stepped back. For a brief moment, the room remained silent. Then several professors burst into laughter, shaking their heads in disbelief. That's it, one of them scoffed. You expect us to evaluate that? Another turned toward Cravasier. Headmaster, how are we even supposed to score something like this? But Cravasier wasn't listening. His eyes remained fixed on the combat dummy. Something's wrong. Before he could say another word, movement caught everyone's attention. Nero, the Grand Sword Saint, slowly rose to her feet. Nero picked up her sword, and in the blink of an eye, she struck. Clang! Ronan barely managed to block the attack in time. Tightening his grip on his sword, he thought, she's fast. Where did you learn your swordsmanship? Nero asked coldly. Ronin met her gaze. I can't answer that. Nero narrowed her eyes. Then answer this instead. Did you see my attack just now? Ronin smirked. You drew your sword at incredible speed and swung it 3 times, even from that distance. The professors looked at one another in confusion. 3 times. To them, it had looked like she had only swung once. Nero calmly sheathed her sword. Good. Then you understand. She stepped closer. I attacked 3 times to prove a point. Your fast slash was arrogant. Ronin raised an eyebrow. Oh, you slowed your strikes so the professors could follow them. She frowned. That's an insult to their abilities. The other professors stiffened. She slowed her attacks. None of them had even noticed. Ronin tilted his head as he considered her words. So that's how she interpreted it. In reality, he had only slowed his slash because he wasn't confident his sword could withstand the full force of his technique. But judging by how irritated Nero seemed, explaining that probably wouldn't help. After a moment, Nero let out a quiet breath and returned her sword to its sheath. You're my student now, she declared. The entire room froze. Even Cravasier's eyes widened. One professor stammered, Grand Sword Saint, are you saying you've already accepted him? She folded her arms. That's exactly what I'm saying. Cravasier chuckled and shook his head. Well, that settles it. He turned toward Ronin. Thank you for your demonstration. Now tell me, why did you come to fill an academy? Ronin thought about everything that had brought him here, his failures, his regrets, and the mistakes he refused to repeat. His expression became firm. Because I don't want to live with any regrets. Silence filled the hall. Cravasier studied him for a long moment before a smile slowly spread across his face. A good answer, he said. You may leave. As Ronin turned to walk away, Cravasier looked at the other professors. I'll be teaching him as well. Murmurs immediately spread across the room. One professor frowned. Headmaster, what makes him so special? Cravasier didn't answer. At that exact moment, thud. The combat dummy, famous for its flawless regeneration, suddenly lost its head. The 2 professors who had mocked Ronin earlier could only stare in shock. The dummy had survived countless powerful attacks before, yet a single slash had completely severed its head. They could do nothing but watch in disbelief. As Ronin stepped out of the examination hall, one thought lingered in his mind. Could I have defeated Nero in my previous life? He couldn't stop thinking about it. She was unbelievably powerful. If he wanted to surpass her, he would have to train harder than ever before. Even so, he was glad he had come to fill an academy. There was still so much he could learn. After the practical exam came the written test. Ronin had spent an entire month preparing, so he assumed it wouldn't be too difficult. He was completely wrong. When he walked out of the examination hall, his face was pale, and his hands were trembling. Maria looked at him in confusion. What's wrong with you? Ronin answered in a hollow voice. I barely finished half of the exam. Maria's jaw dropped. Wait, what? Yahello let out a sigh. He never even looked at the books and study materials you gave him. Maria stared at Ronin as if he had committed an unforgivable crime. You didn't read the books. Ronin quietly looked away. Maria groaned. Unbelievable. Then she sighed. Don't panic yet. I'm sure you did amazingly on the practical exam, so you'll probably still get accepted. The moment she finished speaking, a glowing blue tablet appeared in the center of the courtyard. Students immediately rushed toward it to check the results. Maria and Yahello joined the crowd and searched for their names. Yahell's eyes widened. First place, in the theory exam. On top of that, he had ranked 12th in the practical exam for the magic department. Maria smiled proudly. 9th place in both the theory and practical exams for the martial arts department. Not bad. Yahello laughed in disbelief. I actually got first place. Maria patted him on the back. Congratulations, genius. After celebrating for a moment, Maria turned to Ronin. All right, what about you? Ronin looked at the results board. After a long silence, he quietly muttered, my name isn't there. Maria blinked. What? She stepped closer and frowned. Stop joking. Did you check properly? Ronin searched the board again, but no matter how many times he looked, his name was nowhere to be found. Just as Ronin was about to give up hope, boom! A powerful explosion shook the entire courtyard. The students gasped and turned toward the sky. A gigantic bird descended from above, its crimson wings burning like living flames. The Glory Phoenix, Maria whispered. The Glory Phoenix was a sacred ceremonial bird that appeared only to announce the valedictorian of each department. The Phoenix's eyes locked onto Ronin. Then, without warning, it launched a blazing fireball straight at him. Ronin instinctively tensed, preparing to dodge, until he noticed something inside the flames. A message. The fireball stopped in front of him before bursting into glowing letters. First place, practical exam 5712th place, Theory exam martial arts department valedictorian. The entire courtyard fell silent. Then Maria and Ashel erupted in celebration. You did it, Maria shouted. Ashel grinned from ear to ear. I knew you'd dominate the practical exam. Ronan let out a relieved sigh. Not bad. Maria shook her head in disbelief. You actually ranked first in the practical exam, despite scoring that low in theory. That's unbelievable. As everyone celebrated, another thought crossed Ronan's mind. If I took first place, then someone else must have lost it. He turned around. A young man was walking straight toward him, his sharp eyes filled with disbelief. He stopped only a few steps away and stared directly at Ronan. That spot had been meant for him. If Ronan had never appeared, he would have finished first in the practical exam. The sword saint, Schlieffen. Ronan frowned. Of course it had to be him. Unaware of the tension, Maria whispered, looks like Schlieffen wants to talk to you. But Ronan knew better. Schlieffen isn't the type to come over for a friendly conversation. In his previous life, Schlieffen had been obsessed with becoming the strongest swordsman alive. The mere thought of someone surpassing him was unbearable. Ronan knew that getting involved with him now would only create endless trouble. I need to stay away from him at all costs. Putting on a casual smile, Ronan said, honestly, I'm just as surprised as you are that I got first place. Schlieffen frowned. You're lying. Ronan shrugged. I'm telling the truth. Do you have any proof that I'm not? Schlieffen clenched his jaw. Ronan was right. He had no proof. But that didn't matter. Without another word, he attacked. Clang! Ronan blocked the strike just in time. Maria and Ashel gasped in shock. Schlieffen had attacked without any warning. Pulling his sword back, Schlieffen looked at Ronan with newfound interest. You blocked that. If you weren't worthy of first place, you never could have. His grip tightened around his sword. Show me what earned you that rank. I want to see it with my own eyes. Ronan let out a tired sigh. This guy is such a pain. Fine. If Schlieffen wanted proof, he'd get it. Ronan stepped forward and unleashed his attack. 3 slashes in a single motion. Schlieffen barely managed to defend against them. His hands trembled ever so slightly from the impact. A hint of respect appeared in his eyes. I understand now why you earned that score. Then his expression hardened once again. But that's still not enough to defeat me. He rushed forward once more. Come on, show me everything you've got. Ronan gritted his teeth. This guy's completely insane. Schlieffen's attacks became more relentless with every exchange. Ronan continued blocking and dodging, but he could feel the fight escalating. Then a dangerous thought crossed his mind. If this keeps going, he'll use his aura. Ronan had witnessed Schlieffen's aura in his previous life. The Tempest sword was an overwhelming force. If Schlieffen unleashed it here, the situation would spiral out of control. Ronan made his decision in an instant. He turned around and ran. Schlieffen froze. Wait, is he actually running? Without looking back, Ronan sprinted across the courtyard. No way am I dealing with that headache. Schlieffen's eye twitched. Never turn your back on an opponent. He immediately chased after him. As he closed the distance and prepared to strike, Ronan suddenly grabbed Ashel and shoved him in front of himself as a shield. Schlieffen came to an abrupt stop, completely dumbfounded. Ronan peeked out from behind Ashel with a grin. A true warrior knows when to retreat. Schlieffen frowned. You coward. Hiding behind a woman. Ashel's eye twitched. I am a man. Ronan smirked. He knew Schlieffen well enough to understand one thing. As arrogant as he was still a gentleman. He would never attack someone he believed was defenseless. Which meant Ronan was perfectly safe for now. Still hiding behind Ashel, Ronan suddenly swung his sword. Bam! Bam! Ronan's blade slammed straight into Schlieffen's nose. Schlieffen stumbled backward, clutching his face. Ronan flashed a grin. Maria, Ashel, run. Schlieffen recovered almost instantly and tried to stop them, but by the time he reacted, the 3 of them were already long gone. Moments later, an instructor arrived after noticing the commotion. He spotted Schlieffen leaning on his sword while holding his injured nose. His eyes widened in alarm. Sir Schlieffen, what happened? Who did this to you? Schlieffen waved him off. Drop the sir. I'm an applicant just like everyone else. Treat me like any other student. The instructor hesitated before nodding. Understood. At least tell me who injured you. Schlieffen shook his head. There's no need. It was a fair fight. Although the instructor looked unconvinced, he chose not to question him further. As Schlieffen stood upright, his eyes drifted to his sword, and he froze. A long crack ran across the blade. His expression darkened. Impossible. His sword had been forged from mithril, one of the toughest metals in existence. Yet somehow, it had cracked. Schlieffen tightened his grip. He hadn't considered Ronan's technique anything extraordinary before. But this was undeniable proof that there was something unusual about him. I'll remember that name, he muttered. Ronin. The following day, Ronin and Ashel traveled to Shimo Forest on the outskirts of the capital. Ashel looked around uneasily. Should we really be here right now? Schlieffen is the son of a duke. His family is second only to the imperial family. If he decides to come after you, we're finished. Ronin smirked. Relax. Schlieffen may be obsessed with swordsmanship, but he's not the type to hold grudges. Ashel frowned. How do you know that? Ronin's expression softened. In my previous life, Schlieffen was everyone's role model. He protected the weak, fought for justice, and was practically the definition of a perfect noble. Ashel still looked unconvinced. Then why did he attack you? Ronin chuckled. Because he hates losing. But if he truly wanted revenge, we'd already be behind bars. Instead, he probably told everyone it was a fair duel. After a long journey, they finally reached the location Vaughn had marked on the map, Fernando Spring. The moment Ronin saw it, he immediately recognized what it was. A mana vein. Mana flowing throughout the world occasionally gathered into a single location, creating an incredibly dense reservoir of magical energy. Such places were known as mana veins, and their value was beyond measure. Even an ordinary stone left nearby could transform into a high-grade mana stone. A common herb could evolve into an extraordinary medicinal plant. Countless people would kill for ownership of a place like this. Yet Vaughn had simply handed it over to them. Ronin let out a sigh and shook his head. That lion is either incredibly generous, or incredibly stupid. He looked over at Ashel. Do you feel it? Ashel's eyes widened. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. I've never felt this much mana before. I could probably cast spells far stronger than usual here. Ronin nodded before looking down at the egg. It had begun glowing brightly. Ashel gasped. Ronin, the egg. It's absorbing an enormous amount of mana. Ronin smiled. Good. Let's see what hatches. After a moment, Ashel looked around uneasily. Doesn't something feel strange? Ronin raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Ashel frowned. Vaughn said that because of the mana vein, this place should be filled with magical beasts and mystical creatures. Even ordinary animals should be everywhere. He paused before asking quietly, do you hear anything? And that's it for today's recap. Ronin has only just begun shaking the academy, and even bigger battles are waiting ahead. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next recap.